Hello, you guys. How are you? Listen, okay, I had every intention of going over Enies Lobby first, and I will, but I just finished the post Enies Lobby arc, and I just have so many things that I am thinking about and want to discuss. So I figured that I would do this first while it's fresh, and then go back and do Enies Lobby. This arc was just incredible. It's very short. It's only like 10 chapters, but there is so much information, world building, critical moments that happen here before we officially end the Water 7 Enies Lobby saga. So let's just jump right into it. We start with Franky saying that he spent the 200 million berries that he stole from the crew to purchase this wood from a jewel tree called Adam. And it is this very tough, rare wood, and it occasionally will be sold on the black market. So he bought that wood, and it is the same wood that the Oro Jackson was built from, which is what Goldie Roger, sailed in. It was the only ship to sail around the globe successfully. So he wants to build his dream ship with this wood and give it to the crew, which I think is just so cool. It's kind of his way of thanking them and apologizing for everything that they've gone through, whether from him or someone else. And then we find out this crazy lore drop. I was not expecting it at all. So this vice admiral comes to Water 7 in search of the Straw Hats, and he finds them, and we find out that Vice Admiral Garp is Luffy's grandfather. I was not expecting this at all. I totally thought that it was Goldie Roger. I thought he was Luffy's grandfather. So to find out that his grandfather was some guy in the Navy, I was completely shocked. And it's quite funny to see them interact because they are very similar. So they argue and they love to eat and fall asleep and just be chaotic. And while Admiral Garp is here, we find out a lot of information from him as well. So he talks about Shanks and how he shouldn't have left Luffy with Shanks so much because, he influenced him. He was a bad influence because he's a pirate. And Luffy gets very defensive and he says, well, listen, do you even know who Shanks is? He is one of the four emperors of the second half of the Grand Line. So there's Shanks and Whitebeard, and then we don't know the other two. But essentially, the Navy and the seven warlords of the sea are allied against these four emperors, pirate emperors. So I thought it was quite interesting that Shanks was one of these four emperors. Whitebeard doesn't surprise me, and I guess I shouldn't be surprised about Shanks, but we've just seen so little of him that I don't know, it's just very interesting to see that he's so powerful. So then we see Koby and Helmeppo. Okay, so timeline wise, it's only been like 2 or 3 months, maybe, since Luffy last saw Koby, and they're completely different. So I don't know what kind of Marine Navy training. I mean, we saw it in the cover stories and it was quite funny, but to see such a drastic difference in such a little amount of time was so hilarious. I felt like Luffy. I had no idea who I was looking at when he first came on screen, or, when I first saw him. So after that shock, we then get more lore on Luffy, and we find out that the revolutionary Monkey D. Dragon is Luffy's father, who we saw in Logtown. He is who helped Luffy escape from Logtown. My mind is blown. After the extreme emotional devastation that we were put through in Enies Lobby and Water 7, we get rewarded with all of this amazing world building and lore drops. I am eating it up. It is truly the best way that he could have made me forgive him because I was very upset at what he put me through. So I have since been told that the revolutionaries are not pirates. The revolutionaries are a separate faction that are actively fighting against the world government. And I find this very interesting because Luffy quite literally just declared war on the world government by shooting down their flag in Enies Lobby. So the fact that his father is the main guy actively, leading this group against the world government, I mean, like father, like son, I guess. But I do find it interesting that Dragon isn't a pirate. So he's just a revolutionary. So now that Luffy has declared war on the world government, does this make him a pirate revolutionary? I don't know, just a lot of interesting information here. So after they kind of part ways for a minute, Koby wants to talk with Luffy alone. So they go to talk, and Nami, in her classic nosy spy fashion, hooks up a transponder snail so she can spy on their conversation. And Luffy asks how they got to the Grand Line, and we find out that the Navy ships are able to sail through the calm belt because they are embedded with sea prism stone, which I guess kind of neutralizes the Neptunians and allows them to pass through, which honestly is such a cheat code. Like, of course, the Navy would have something like that. But, considering just everything, it would explain why they're able to just appear very quickly. So I found that very interesting. And so did Nami. And Koby also tells Luffy that there is a doctor named Dr. Vegapunk who has kind of a professional on devil fruits, a scientist with devil fruits, and he has recently found out how to feed devil fruit to inanimate objects. So I wonder then if he is the scientist behind Funkfried, the sword who ate the elephant fruit. So I wonder because, obviously Spandam was Navy. So I'm very curious if this Dr. Vegapunk allowed him or created this sword for him. So I'm very interested to find out more about the devil fruits and all of that lore in general. It's just so fascinating to me. So then Koby also says that the second half of the Grand Line is called the New World, which, as we just learned, is where all these four emperors are. So it's definitely the big leagues. We are starting to look ahead and things are getting more intense. So Koby then says that he wants to become an admiral and he hopes to see Luffy again in the New World. And Luffy encourages him in this. He wants him to become an admiral and become a worthy adversary. And I love this moment. And I find it quite interesting that, because we've seen so many terrible people in the Navy, in the Marines, and in the military. So the fact that there's somebody like Koby, who I believe genuinely has a good heart and a strong sense of justice, the fact that he still loves Luffy and respects Luffy and wants him to succeed while also wanting to be the one that captures him one day, I find it to be a very wholesome rivalry and friendship, and there's a lot of respect embedded in both sides. And I don't know, I just think we're finding just a lot of dual minds within the military, and it makes sense because not everybody is going to be the exact same. But I find, and we'll talk about this in just a minute, but with Aokiji, please tell me if I'm butchering that, or Kuzan. We're about to see this with him as well, but he's not completely in line with the Navy's belief systems, and even with Vice Admiral Garp, it kind of seems like there's like an old school approach, a new current mindset, and then kind of a hope for the future, right? So I feel like Koby kind of fits into that potential for a new future of the military, where they might be able to, kind of successfully coexist with pirates, right? Not exact. And then there's those who are completely allied with the world government, which would be like Spandam, right? And then kind of maybe old school, which kind of seems like Vice Admiral Garp, who, he doesn't necessarily want to coexist with pirates, but like it's his grandson, he's not gonna, he cornered Roger several times, which I find is very interesting. So he's quite powerful if he was able to do that. So I don't know, there's a lot introduced here. There's a lot of different pathways and theories that are just kind of floating in my brain, and that's why I wanted to make this video while it was fresh, because I just want to get my thoughts kind of out in the open. So after Luffy and Koby part ways, they kind of throw this massive big party to celebrate. And while Robin is kind of watching the festivities here, she is visited by Aokiji, and they have this kind of tense but interesting and fascinating conversation where Aokiji tells Robin that he was good friends with Saul, the giant who allowed her to escape, or helped her to escape. And he wanted to make sure that he did not die in vain and that she went on to honor his death, right? And so he asks her if she's finally found a place in the Straw Hats where she can belong, and she says that she has. And he tells Robin to go and live and to prove that O'Hara is still alive. And I just find that such an interesting conversation. I genuinely believe, again, Kuzan is kind of another enigma within the Navy. And on some of my other videos, you guys said that his, Aokiji, the blue pheasant, I believe, stands for lazy justice. So he kind of, it's a looser sense of justice, right? It's his compass is not quite, it's not fixed on one point, right? He very much, I think, has a looser sense of what he believes is justice, and it's not completely aligned with what the main core of the world government and the military says that it is, which I just find very interesting. And clearly that's not the same with the other admirals, as we saw with the other guy, starts with an S, who blew up the refugee ship. He's a lot more in line with like Spandam, but he's on an admiral level, which is scary. But I just found his character very interesting. I'm very interested to see what becomes of his character as this goes on, but there's a lot of layers to him, and I was very actually pleasantly surprised by this conversation that he had with her. So then we cut and we see that Shanks has arrived to meet Whitebeard, and we find out a lot here as well. Shanks's aura, by the way, is completely powerful and terrifying. People are passing out as he walks by. And we find out that Shanks and Buggy were apprentices on Roger's ship, and that they regularly encountered and fought with Whitebeard. We also find out that Shanks dueled with Hawkeye, and when Whitebeard asks what took his arm from him, Shanks responds and says that he gave it up for a new era. And he's picturing Luffy when he says this. And again, all of this kind of symbolism with Luffy, where a bunch of people are just kind of, we keep hearing about this new age and this new era of pirates. We saw it with Doflamingo back at the beginning of Long Ring Longland, when he talks about, there's a new age of pirates where only the powerful survive, where only the powerful can exist. But then there's also all of this with Luffy, right? And there's strong ties to Luffy and Roger, where there's this big sense of freedom, where Luffy means freedom for pirates, right? Freedom from the military, freedom from the confines and the fighting and the limits that kind of each group is within right now and are trying to enforce upon one another. So it seems like Shanks is really putting a lot of his chips on Luffy here, betting and sacrificing a lot. So I'm very curious to see kind of what his future plans and hopes are for Luffy in the future of pirates. So we find out the reason why Shanks is here to confront and talk to Whitebeard. And he's got these scratches on his eye, and we find out that he had a fight with Blackbeard, and he is there to beg Whitebeard to stop Ace from hunting down Blackbeard. He says that Blackbeard is very dangerous. He's not the type that should be taken lightly, and Whitebeard refuses because he says that he has committed the ultimate pirate sin. He's committed fratricide, that he needs to be taught a lesson. So Shanks and Whitebeard get into a fight, and the minute their swords clash, it quite literally splits the sky. So these are two very powerful individuals. So after this, we cut to Blackbeard. Him and his crew see the article about Luffy and the Straw Hats and how they're at Enies lobby. So they say that they're close and they want to go hunt for him. And that's when it cuts to Ace. Ace has caught up with him, and it leaves this, you're kind of half excited to see Ace again, but also really nervous, because if Shanks, this one of the four emperors, is saying that Blackbeard is incredibly dangerous and that Ace shouldn't go after him, and now you see Ace is at this confrontation, it makes you really worried and nervous. So we stop at this point, and then we cut to Usopp rehearsing how he's gonna rejoin the crew. And he goes through several things, and Sanji's there listening, and he's like, "What is this idiot doing?" And so from then on, we learn that the next stop is Fishman Island, which is where I guess Kokoro and Tom were from. They're kind of fish people and mermaids. And then we also learned that to get to Fishman Island, they have to sail through the Florian Triangle, which is very dangerous. Obviously, it's an allude to the Bermuda Triangle. Kokoro says that there's been plenty of sights and reports of ghost ships fighting and sinking other ships. So, very interesting adventure that we're about to go on here. And then we also see that all the bounties have officially raised and come out. Luffy is now at 300 million. And oh my gosh, you guys, the picture, the drawing of Sanji was so funny, and Sanji's reaction. And then Sanji and Zoro's interaction here, where Zoro says that it looks just like him, and Sanji is so mad that his words just translate to symbols. It was so hilarious. And then Sniper King was pictured and not Usopp. And then Chopper only had 50 berries, which I thought was quite funny as well. So now they find out that their ship is done, and Franky, his family, is asking Luffy and crew to please take Franky with them because he's the son of a pirate and it's his dream to sail on his ship. So as they start to look at the ship, it is beautiful. It's huge, it's brand new, it's stunning, it's everything the crew could ever want. And so Luffy asks where Franky is. Iceberg says that Franky doesn't want to see them because he knows that Luffy is going to ask him to be his shipwright, and if he's there when Luffy asks, he can't say no because it's his dream. But he still carries a lot of guilt. So he says that the only way that he's going to be able to get Franky to join his crew is if they force him. So the Franky family and crew decide they manage this by taking his Speedo trunks and making him chase them through town to get to Scrap Island. And he's quite literally just streaking through Water 7. And one of the really funny part was like, "You pervert, I hope you get the death penalty." It's such a crackish scene, honestly. And then so he gets there, and he's kind of fighting the crew and he doesn't want to get on, and then Robin straight up just grabbing them and crushing them. I was not expecting that. Honestly, it feels like she's such a big sister of the crew now. I feel like it's so funny, and she's smiling while she does this. It's just so nice to see her relaxed and having fun. So we have this whole big scene about, Iceberg tells Franky that he has to forgive himself for what happened to Tom. And, he pretends to cry, or he pretends that Robin is hurting him again so that he has the excuse to cry. And he doesn't want to leave his brothers and sisters and his family that he's made on Water 7, but he so desperately wants to sail on this ship. And it was just a beautiful moment seeing Franky fully forgive himself, and I just adored it. It was a great moment. So then we get into some serious stuff here. Zoro addresses the crew and says, so then we get into something again more serious here. So Sanji tells the crew that he heard Usopp rehearsing about, rejoining the crew, and everyone gets excited, and Luffy's like, let's go find him, let's go get him so we can get out of here. And that's when Zoro says, hold on. And he has a very serious talk with the crew about how he will not accept Usopp back on the crew or forgive him in any way until he admits what he did wrong and apologizes. And the crew initially fights him on this, and he really cracks down and says that no, Luffy's the captain. He has to be respected. This is not a game. This is not a joke. He blatantly disobeyed and disrespected Luffy, and he needs to apologize. Otherwise, he's not coming back on this ship. And the crew really doesn't want to hear this, right? They've had a lot of confrontation. They just want things to be good and fine. But he makes a really good point. And while I completely understand and I can see Usopp's pain and insecurities here, he has to take responsibility. He has to take ownership of and be accountable for what he did. And I really love this moment from Zoro because he's got this sense of maturity about him. It's what the crew needs to hear. And it's not something that Robin can say because she's too new to all of this. Zoro is the one that's been with them the longest. So we see a major, I have described it before that Water 7 broke the crew down, and then Enies Lobby reforged them as a family. And it not only has made the crew realize that the enemies that they are facing are extremely powerful and they're only going to get more powerful, but now Luffy has made an enemy of the world government. This is not fun and games anymore. This is a legitimate thing. The crew is, yes, a family, but they are still first and foremost a crew, and Luffy is their captain, and they need to take this seriously. They need to get on the same page. They need to respect Luffy and stay together, and not pull things like this that's going to put them at a serious disadvantage when they get to the new world and they're facing down these pirate emperors and the world government. There's a lot going on. So Zoro is such a good, strong voice of reason and maturity here. I completely agree with him. And it just goes to show it's not a black and white situation, right? And obviously Zoro cares about Usopp a lot, but that's why I think too that he wants him and needs him to take accountability. It's he knows that Usopp is capable of it, and it's what he needs to grow as a character and as a person. So they wait and wait for Usopp to show up. It's been 2 days and they're getting ready to set out. And then we see that Garp has actually come back. He let him go and then he was forced to come back. So the crew is having to hurriedly get together and get ready to sail out because they're under attack now. Garp's power throws, by the way, are crazy. I'm quite. It didn't say, I don't think, that he had a devil fruit power. So is he just unnaturally strong or does he have this devil fruit? I need to know. I don't know. Maybe it'll be clarified later on. So Usopp is running through town and he's trying to catch up to them. And, he's doing his little, yeah, I'm the first mate, of course. You guys are so lucky to have me back. And this might irritate some people. And again, he's terrified to come back to them, after this big blow up fight, right? And he's been in his Sniper King disguise. He hasn't wanted to deal with this confrontation of coming back to the crew. He's terrified deep down that they are going to reject him after all of this. So he's going back to his coping methods of lying to make himself feel better. And so he sees them as they're sailing away and he's like, okay, I'm here, hey you guys, and no one's responding. They're defending the ship from these cannonballs, and he sits there and says, well, let me say this one thing. And he screams, I'm sorry. And he breaks down and says he's sorry that he's so stubborn. He's like, I know that I said I quit the crew. Can I take it back? Can I please take it back? And he's crying and upset. And you see the specific panel, I think, is Luffy, Sanji, Zoro, and Chopper maybe, and it's Zoro who says his name, and Luffy extends his hand. And I should also say that before he says he's sorry, Chopper is sitting there going, I hear him. You guys, he's calling, and they don't acknowledge him because they promised and agreed that he needs to say sorry. And Luffy, you can see him sweating, and it's so visibly hard for him. And he says, I can't hear anything. And just the palpable relief on all of their faces and then when he truly apologizes. So Luffy extends his hand, and Usopp grabs it, and they get on board. And Nami's crying, and they're all so happy. And Franky charges up this super boost, and they're able to blast off and escape the Navy and go on their way. And it's such a fantastic arc, and we're not done. So after they escape and go on their way, we kind of go through this montage of all the different islands and places that they have been, their previous friends and encounters, seeing them have their new bounties on their heads, and they get to see these updated pictures. I loved the bit with Baradier when they see Sanji's picture and they're like passing them out to the customers, and everyone's just so proud. I loved Kaya's where she said she needs to study her medical stuff so that if Usopp comes back, she can treat his wounds. Dr. Kureha on Drum Island, just happy to see Chopper and see that he's okay. Just such a great montage of moments. I absolutely loved going back everywhere and seeing everybody just for a glimpse. And we also see Dragon, and he says that with Luffy's confidence, that one day they will meet and it'll make the world question itself. So it was very interesting to see Dragon acknowledge the existence of Luffy. I'm very curious to kind of see his plans for Luffy and see what lies there. So then, on this final couple chapters to close out the arc, we go back to Ace and Blackbeard. And Ace and Blackbeard start their duel. Blackbeard had asked Ace if he wanted to join his crew and that they would take over the world together. And Ace is like, absolutely not. And Blackbeard had also said, yeah, and we're going to go after Luffy and these Straw Hats and kill them and, you know, establish a name for ourselves. And Ace says, Luffy? Yeah, he's my brother. So now I'm like double ticked, right? Which I loved seeing that protective edge in Ace over Luffy. So then we find out that Blackbeard killed his crewmate because his crewmate had found something. His crewmate had found his dream devil fruit that he had been searching for literal decades, and it's a Logia type fruit, and it is the dark fruit. So Blackbeard killed him and consumed the fruit, and he now has this very powerful Logia type, and it's darkness, and it like sucks everything in. It's kind of like a void, like a black hole, and it can compress and crush things. And on top of that, if someone has a devil fruit power that he's touching, it gets rid of they temporarily lose their devil fruit power, and Blackbeard gets it. So it's really very powerful, and we're really starting to see what Shanks meant by this guy is dangerous and he's not here for fun and games. He is setting out to make a name for himself. And so Ace struggles a bit in this fight for sure, especially trying to figure out how to deal with this power, but he's still holding his own. And we see in the final bit that this very duel would later on, we see that it would trigger future events. So this is a massive and pinnacle critical moment in the story is the duel between these two. So there's just so many elements now. I mean, there's Shanks and Whitebeard, there's Blackbeard, there's the revolutionaries, there's the four emperors, there's the world government. It's so crazy. There's so many elements and things going on. So my mind is just blown. I absolutely adored this arc. It was such a fantastic way to end such a great saga, brings so many pieces from other arcs together while giving us a ton of new information to theorize and think on as we go into the next bit as we encroach on the new world. So I just love this story so much. I hope you enjoyed this. Again, I do apologize. I will go back and go through Enies Lobby. I will post my Skypiea compilation. Before I post this, my Skypiea compilation should be up. I hope you're enjoying those compilations. I apologize. I know they're in portrait mode, but you know, just for those of you who don't have TikTok that wanted to see my initial thoughts and updates and reactions, I appreciate your guys' support so much. I hope you had a wonderful Christmas. I hope you have a wonderful New Year, and I will check in soon with another video.